I want to welcome everybody to Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. This is our national outreach call for November. They know I'm going to introduce Steve Grumbine, the founder and CEO of Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action. Thank you, Steve.
First of all, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We have a very special guest. Esha is the host of the podcast Historically, and she is just a dynamo of knowledge. I mean, just an amazingly resourceful person that in our time that I've gotten to know her, she has taught me so much about so many different things. And so we got to have her on our Halloween podcast where we talked about centrism and the vortex of propaganda that comes with centrism. And I thought, what better way to bring this information and all the knowledge that she has to Real Progressives audience and our volunteers than to have her be on our national outreach call. So I asked Esha to join us. And with that, I bring Esha. Esha, here we go. If you can hear me, I don't know how you're going to signal her, but let her know.
I will. Okay, Esha, you can start.
Yeah. I guess I'm supposed to start. And okay, so the problem is I can't hear anyone else, but if you have a question, just put it in the Q&A section and somebody will alert me. So, are you ready for the fun to begin?
Yay.
Okay. So many of you went through what I call the stages of leftism. In 2015, we were like, yeah, we're Bernie, and we're gonna go and campaign hard. And we were also naive because we didn't really realize how they won't play by their same rules. So in 2020, in the beginning, it looked great. It looked like Bernie was going to win so many states. And then mysteriously, just everything went downhill from South Carolina. And so people are wondering, is there a path? What do we do now? And hopefully today we can shed light on what to do. So what happened? Well, we had a problem with neoliberalism, the erosion of the safety net, proletarization, imperialism, globalization, and atomization. So I would say starting with around 1980, we had gotten basically the hierarchy a little down, but Empire Strikes Back, and basically they redid the hierarchy so that we have the worst income inequality probably ever. And it means that most of us are not in any positions of power. And so we have to understand what we're facing next. So what happened is what I call, what not just me, but everyone calls a counter-revolution. If you remember FDR's speech where he says, "They're unanimous in their hatred for me, and I welcome their hatred." Right before that, he talks about how the enemies of something, like he talks about government of organized mob is like government of organized money is just as bad as government of organized mob. And now we basically have a a government of mobsters who have a lot of money. And that is a big problem because it means that we, the people, do not have the power. And can you guys see this? Sorry.
Yes.
How do I do it? Okay. So this is from 1933. This is for Paul Hindenburg, and it says, "I'm with him." They're the centrist party. And so, yeah. So what seems like isolated events seem to repeat over and over. So I have this quote from Worf from Star Trek. It says, "There is this theory of the Mobius where there's a twist in the fabric of space where time becomes a loop." And so, so what happens is that what you're led to believe is isolated phenomenon keeps happening over and over with just a little bit of a twist. And so I thought we should learn about some of them just so you can get a taste of where to go and what to do. So the first thing we need to understand is that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are not actually enemies. They both have different roles, and so it's like a division of labor. So it's like, it's like a hammer and a nail. They both serve different roles. So we actually don't have an opposition. We have two corporate parties. Yes, there are some differences, and so we kind of have to understand where the temptations are and where the differences are. So the first thing we need to do is basically, this is wise advice. Tell me who pays you, and I'll tell you who plays the music for you to dance. This was Nicolas Maduro's interview with Jorge Ramos. But this was a good meme because that's kind of what we're not trained to automatically do. Because people around us are trustworthy. Your friends are trustworthy. So we're automatically not suspicious enough of people in authority enough. And so before, like, often you can exactly predict what they're going to do if you figure out who pays them. So, okay. But often, and of course, this is kind of how it feels like all the time for me. They're not fighting the same battlefield. If you see, the Republicans, even though there's a difference between Biden and Trump, is over 100,000 votes in Michigan, why are they filing something? Because they are signaling to their donors that we're going to be fighting harder than them for you. The Democrats are kind of made to capitulate. I mean, already Joe Biden's been talking about having Republicans everywhere and how much he loves Mitch McConnell or whatnot. And that kind of unity is not something we want. And I can give you thousands and thousands of examples of where the Democrats don't even fight. Literally, everything that happened between 2009 and 2011, everything that's going to happen now. So, in fact, they actually don't even, the way they do it is they don't even bring a bill to the table. If they're like, oh, Joe Lieberman's going to say no. It's like, okay, let him vote no. You bring it to the table. And this is where a lot of people, a lot of misinformation. I've even seen Joyanne Reid say that it takes 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. Nope. It takes 51 votes to nuke a filibuster. And also, if you look at the House rules and the Senate rules, they more or less have the majority leader has a tyranny. They can do whatever they want. So if Chuck Schumer does end up being the majority leader, he literally can do almost any, he can table any bill. So if it's a bill about fracking, he can just not bring it to vote. If it's a bill about socialized healthcare, he can say yes. But of course you can't make excuses for the Democrats. And a lot of people want to believe, like Mulder from the X-Files, who are like, I want to believe in the Democrats' good heart. Don't, because that is, they're not lesser evil. They're just a different form of evil. Can you play this video? Darn. Okay. So, it's okay. I'll figure out how to. They're not lesser evil. They're just a different form of evil. Can you play this video? Darn. Okay. So, it's okay. I'll figure out how to. They're not lesser evil. They're just a different form of evil. Can you play this video? Darn. Okay. So, it's okay. I'll figure out how to. Okay, hold on. Okay, this is okay. Let's see. How do I do this? Let's see if I can play this video.
Gotham needs a hero. Gotham
needs it now more than ever. You betrayed everything you stood for. Betrayed everything you stood for.
What's the point? For out there when you may face such a moment of crisis, and in that moment I hope you have a friend like I did. To plunge their hands into the filth, so that you can keep yours clean.
Your hands look plenty filthy to me, Commissioner.
We take Gotham from the corrupt, the rich, the oppressors of generations who have kept you down with myths of opportunity, and we give it back to you, the people. Gotham is yours. None shall interfere. Do as you please. But start by storming Blackgate and freeing the oppressed! Step forward those who would serve, for an army will be raised. The powerful will be ripped from their decadent nests and cast out into the cold world that we know and endure. Courts will be convened. Spoils will be enjoyed. Blood will be shed. The police will survive as they learn to serve.
So, the point of that is that, doesn't it sound a lot like what socialists want to do? Like, it sounds like, yeah, we want to take the Gotham from the corrupt. But then, if you look at it, liberals have cast Bane as a villain. So they see things differently than we do. And so we can't accept their framing. Here's a quote from Lenin. The cadets stand for Bernie is Bane. Okay. Cadets means constitutional Democrats, which sounds a lot like the Democrats, or worms in the grave of the revolution. So what he means by this is that strategically, the Democratic Party will constantly be ineffective in the most ridiculous ways. They will misdirect energy. For example, they're like, why don't you get more involved in the Democratic Party so that you can push it left? But what they don't tell you is getting involved in the Democratic Party literally means getting brainwashed into their worldview, where so many things are just unrealistic. They're always wrong. I mean, sometimes they might be right, but it's usually by accident. The reason why they're always wrong is because we have to follow the money and see who's playing the music for them to dance to. And we know it's the donors, the big pharma, big energy, insurance companies, Wall Street. So on top of that, they muddy the waters in such a way that it actually makes it harder for people to navigate away from the threat that the right wing is, and come to join each other for actually like actual change. So this is a funny quote from Lenin, which I love because literally nothing's changed. There is nothing more convenient for our liberals than that ancient, colorless, general haziness, oppositionism, progressivism. What is hidden behind these words? What sort of oppositional activity was displayed by an individual? Which class was served? Are things they prefer not to discuss. These things are distasteful to liberals. And so, yeah, they will often have these vague words like, oh, I support reparations. We should start a commission to investigate the theory of reparations. And then they will totally start a commission to investigate whatever. And that's about it. So they always want to give you the aesthetic of being in opposition. I don't know if you guys remember, but about 4 years ago, they had this bizarre filibuster where it says like, not a filibuster, but some sort of sit-in or something, where they didn't want terrorists to have guns. But then you're like, what kind of people are on the no-fly list? Brown people. This is pretty racist what you guys are doing. And you guys are doing a whole show that's kind of racist. And so, yes, nothing will change until public. Yes, Christine's right. And so, we cannot remove the natural inertia present in the Democratic Party. You just can't. Can you remove? They're made for that. Okay. So, before I get distracted, what you learn is that liberalism is actually dangerous. It's not just status quo, but actually it can be very dangerous for some of us. This is a tweet I found, and this is actually real. He says, every single day for 4 years, I have thought about how Nazi jurist Carl Schmitt, gloating that you can dismantle a democracy right in front of a liberal's face, piece by piece, and all they do is convene breakout sessions and committee meetings till the boots are in the halls. And yes, I mean, you've seen it. The weird where they impeached Trump on the only thing he wasn't guilty of, or or like when Obama was in power, where they had like some commission to investigate the water in Flint as opposed to just sending in the National Guard or sending in FEMA or somebody to fix the water. And the reason why is because the way success is defined in our country, like people who, like for the liberal class, like people who confuse rules with morality. Often you'll see during the Kavanaugh hearings, you heard this. They did not ask Kavanaugh, "Are you a multiple rapist?" No, they asked him, "Are you willing to go through the procedure of an FBI test or whatever?" And so they have a belief in the magic procedural theory. They think that the system itself is just. But of course, we know that our system is made by genocidal maniacs, so how can it be just? It cannot. This one is really, can you guys see this? This is from New York Times, 1934, April 25th. So the centrists in said Germany, they argued that once the Nazis participate in the government, that they will become more moderate, and at the same time, their political ascendancy will be curbed because in the nature of things, they will find it impossible to keep the numerous promises made in the course of the recent election campaigns. Bad news. Yeah, that did not happen. Yeah, Nazis accomplished, I don't know. Yeah, just that did not happen. So, some ways where liberals are, I guess, where liberalism is a hindrance to progress is that if the power structure or the authority says somebody is a brutal dictator who killed a billion, trillion, bazillion people, they'll be like, okay. And so here's a funny example where, so if you have in America, for example, if you guys remember Alex Jones, right after Obama got elected president, he was like talking about FEMA camps and Hobbit homes, and he just like flipped out. Well, what you had to remember is that China also has those kind of Alex Jones kind of characters, what we call reactionaries, people who are in power, who lose their power and just a little bit, and they totally freak out, and they're not even in the realm of reality. You can see it on Fox News every night. So I thought this was really funny because she was claiming that her family was oppressed by Mao. And she said, "My great-grandfather had the monopoly of eggs, like all eggs in China." And and then he lost the monopoly, which I guess is sad. But that is like one way to show you that when you concede half the battle, you're not going to win. So here's like another slide where, okay, people. Okay, yes, all worlds, we've always lived in a world where spinning and lying is okay. But this is funny. Read this and guess what year it came from. Okay, I just changed it a little. The Duma is very useful to the industrialists in this respect. Both the Duma and the capitalists have a goodly number of representatives. The landlords, too, would not amount to much these days without capital. For both the capitalists and the landlord, the Congress is a ready-made machinery for passing laws on bonuses to be awarded to themselves. Protective tariffs, another form of bonuses the elites award themselves. Concessions, a third form of bonuses the elite award themselves, and so without limit. So basically, as you can see, it kind of after a while, it kind of becomes incestuous, and they don't even realize what they're doing. But this was from 1906, by the way. And sadly, not much has changed. And so on top of being corrupt, they also advocate the wrong strategy. So, for example, they have a myth where you say, like, which one, just for yourself, think out loud. Which one's harder? Nationalizing all the healthcare or passing the weird Obamacare? You see, if they had like nationalized all the healthcare, and just got rid of all the insurance companies, which the president can do. The president can do whatever. Also, don't fall for the constitutionality BS, because if the president does not care about the Constitution when he's droning kids in Yemen, I don't think he really cares, but it's just an excuse when he wants to help the people. So they always hide behind that. And so you also got this thing where it's like, oh, the moderate mythical voters in somewhere apparently won't vote for too much healthcare. Does that even make sense? If you're in rural Mississippi, you're not going to be like, oh no, I don't like healthcare. I want to pay Aetna because Aetna's cool. No, those are mythical people that don't really exist. But the Democrats will always tell you to appease that mythical people that don't exist. And they'll tell you incrementalism works. And here's what Lenin says. It's him making a joke. We must join in the demand for small things, and these small things will facilitate the fight for the big ones. We regard the small things the surest stage in the struggle for big things. As you can see, with incremental change, the minute you get a GOP governor, they can just, with an executive order, they can just like throw it away. But if it's a big change, another thing is that you can't get somebody excited for incrementalism. To motivate people to do action is very hard. You learn that. And in order to just get them to come outside with a sign for an hour is almost like pulling teeth, because people are busy with their lives. It's a lot of work. It's hard. And so when you are trying to mobilize somebody for, I don't know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat, you're just not going to get people. It's just the way people work, and we have to deal with that. No matter how much you scold them or how logical, they're just not going to be excited about that. And so you're kind of stuck to appealing to authority at that point, i.e. appeasing the GOP or whatever. And so when you've seen this, they're like, oh, those Bernie bros are so like into purity tests. And first of all, I always have to say, name me one other job in the world where you don't have a purity test. Can a teacher be like, hey, today on Fridays, I'm just going to leave my kindergartners in the classroom alone and go smoke some crack? No, that's not allowed. So why is it allowed for politicians? So the idea is that the Democrats have been training their base to expect less and make believe that whatever, they're working hard. And it's harder, like it is getting harder for them to put that veil over people's eyes. But what happens is that your neighbor is probably watching a lot of MSNBC. And he thinks, I don't know, God knows, like Russian memes swung the election or whatever. Your other neighbor is working 4 jobs and trying to raise a kid in that your other neighbor doesn't even have time to watch any TV or read any newspapers, and he doesn't know what's going on day to day. And so for you as a politically conscious person, our very first task is basically getting more people to agree with us, then getting more people excited about what we're going to do. And then we can all come, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, there has never been a change of power in America. So it is an impossible task, like as in something that's never happened. But we do have to operate on the faith that there is a way, somehow, we can figure it out if all of us come together for a solution. And that's what we need to do, is trying to get more people into it, more people excited. Because another thing that the way the propaganda works is that they make a lot of these things seem like a state of nature. No, it's not. All of it is a political choice. As Steve always talks about, I mean, there's always enough. I mean, the US government is sovereign. They can print money. I mean, there's actually so here's Ben. Okay, I'm just gonna send this here, like, so you can watch it later. But here is Ben Bernanke basically saying, let's print money for the Wall Street bailouts. Yes, centrism is like a bunch of boring incrementalism. Yes, it's really boring. But so these are excuses, and these are excuses because and so what you need to do is that, so they'll always say, hey, it's not practical. Actually, lots of things are practical. I mean, for example, did you know that in 2016, in August, so the governor of Wisconsin was illegally throwing away ballots. The federal court had an order for him to register all these people. And that governor disobeyed the federal order. So what did President Obama do? He's like, yeah, well, never mind. But you know what happens? But he could have done more, because do you remember President Eisenhower? He sent in the troops to enforce a court order, not the troops, the National Guards. So of course Obama could have done that. And then you're like, what about the GOP? And I guess what I kind of half jokingly say, what about Fox News? Or I guess what I half jokingly say is, read the Al Jazeera memo. And they also control the FCC. So if you want, or you can, like, everyone in Fox News was totally like sexually harassing people. I mean, why not send some FBI people to investigate them? Like, there is a lot he could have done to play hardball. But for liberals, the minute you play hardball, they're like, authoritarianism, because for them, like, any kind of exercise of power is seen as dangerous because they fundamentally do not trust the people. As you can see, they think when you talk about giving power back to the people, they freak out. They think it's a villain. So here, this is funny too, because this is from Lenin in 1912, I believe. And basically, they talk about how about unity, and of course, unity only goes one way, and we can just like call that BS right now. This is one. Okay, I just have this funny one. I just thought this was funny. But this guy was like, this is kind of like how often I feel when I'm talking to people about privilege. They're like, he stole 6 centuries of my family's heirlooms. No, not that. And so so a lot of them have this, Hillary Clinton, you'll notice that, like, perpetual victimhood, because they believe in their hearts that they did everything they could. But, like, for example, she even wrote a book called Hard Choices, where she was like, this was a hard choice for me to sell out for whatever happened in Libya or whatever. And what she doesn't realize is, for most of us, it's an easy choice. You don't bomb Libya, just let it be. And so basically what I want to end with is that, so what's going to happen is that revolutions or any kind of even extreme egalitarian reforms are incredibly rare. And the authorities and the structures in power will do everything and anything to stop them. You remember how when Bernie was like gaining a little bit of momentum, Chris Matthews was like, "Oh my God, he's going to do executions in Central Park." Well, now if you look at people who actually ended up gaining power and working against the corporation, what are they going to say? "Oh my God, he's a brutal authoritarian dictator that murders his own people." What else? Human rights. Yeah, the funniest one is them calling Maduro a brutal dictator, and then there's Juan Guaido who's always alive and not in jail. So you'll see. So then they want you to imbibe their worldview on things, and don't learn things for yourself. I mean, for example, the other day I was looking at this interview with AOC, and they asked her, "Oh, do you want it to be like Venezuela or the Soviet Union?" And she's like, "No, I want it to be I wanted it to be whatever. What did she say? Social democracy." And I'm like, "No, that's not how you argue, because in the Soviet Union, people used to be serfs. Their average life expectancy was 32 years old. Half the people died before age 32. The illiteracy rate was less than 12%. 12% of the people could read under the Tsar. Under the Soviet Union, they went to outer space and then they actually cured smallpox. And so but the way they put authoritarianism, you're going to never learn about all the good things about going left. I mean, imagine this disease that has hounded humanity for millennia, and we got rid of it. And it would not be without Viktor Zdanov from the Soviet Union. But they won't tell you about it because they want to seem like it's a little bit of a classism too. It's like, oh, these poor peasants, they're like icky, and I can't believe they're actually asking me to follow the rules. Ugh, that's gross. That's kind of the attitude that they come with. And so it just doesn't make any sense to cede half the ground. Yeah, and you'll see a lot more of this. It's like, so the idea is that obviously, like the way the counter-revolution works, often if you paid enough attention, you will realize how infinitely patient, for example, Fidel Castro was. He actually there have been over 9,000 terrorist attacks perpetuated by the US against Cuba since 1960. Yeah, a lot. Cuban exiles have gone and bombed sugar refineries, just daycare centers, hotels, like lots of, like literally all that. And so compared to like the attacks they faced, it's like, yeah. But then you also have been taught not to actually, like, the second thing they do is when they go authoritarian, you actually don't understand or empathize with the people. For example, when they're like, oh my God, in the USSR, they were encouraging people to turn in their neighbors. And I'm like, wouldn't you, if your neighbor participated in the Holocaust? I mean, I would totally be spying on my neighbor if they had killed half the village with shovels. And so oftentimes it's like these ideas of signals of what is bad and what is good, but they'll never, ever analyze those little circumstances to see if their idea is right. Because yes, in a normal circumstance, yes, probably spying on your neighbors is not good. But I mean, when 27 million of people in your country are killed from the Nazis, like imagine what, like, do you guys remember what happened in America after 9/11? Now imagine 1/4 of the population all gone. And so it's kind of like these kind of little things where they discourage you from looking away. And finally, when you look at these little things, you're also able to connect with people. It also requires you to connect with people abroad. For example, about 2 months ago, they were starting this coup against Lukashenko in Belarus. How many of you had Belarusian friends to ask, hey, what's going on? So the framework you got was that brutal dictatorship versus democracy. But the reality was, do you want, like, the opposition candidate was literally running on too many ambulances, as in she wanted to privatize everything. So I guess always when they label, look at the label, and sometimes you'll see a very logical reason for why things are this way. I mean, sometimes you'll wonder, if it's a democracy, why is the same person being elected over and over? Well, suppose we had a functioning democracy, and like in Bolivia, there was Evo Morales, and then there's whatever the opposition is. Of course, Mas is going to win 66% because they're remotely sane. So I guess I kind of hope to kind of show you what the terrain is. And after, like, I guess a few minutes of break, we can answer all the questions.
The next one.
Okay. So let me answer Cameron's question. What can the average person who wants a socialist revolution or a social democrat do better to understand the structures that wield power and thus how to move them? Well, there's only one way to move them: push them. But yeah, you're not going to convince. You're never going to appeal to their good nature because they don't have one. So you're just you're going to have to just get a lot of people on your side, and then I figure out a way. And yeah, so it's not like you have a solution. Okay. Can you talk? Okay. So I love Lenin. So let me let me just talk a little bit about him. Because he is hilarious. So he's like a Twitter troll before Twitter, and so he would write lots of stuff. Like, he literally, what he did was he would write lots of angry letters to the editor, and they would publish it. And then he got a lot of people interested, like a lot of people to understand how to just kind of overthrow the czar, I guess. So let's see. Okay. So let's see. Where do we start? So he like in 1890 he was sent to prison because the czar like the czar, like he basically didn't like the czar because he was a bad person, and the czar so when he was in prison, he wrote this like extremely detailed book about basically everything that was going wrong in Russia, like the fact that you can't really have you can't really have basically like basically it was like taking power. His real name is, let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see. No, I can't. Okay. So here, I'll put this thread down, but then you guys can check it out. He was born in 150 years ago. His real name is Vladimir Ulyanov. And then he actually got kicked out of university because he formed a study group to study Marxism. The ironic thing is, like, right in front of that university, there's a statue dedicated to him. And so despite getting kicked out of the university, at age 20, he still took the bar exam and he passed with flying colors. And while he was working as a lawyer's assistant, he wrote The Friends of the People. And it's basically how the liberals just kind of are sneaky and not trustworthy, like an entire thing. And so then he met his wife in a Marxist study circle, and then they got married. And then he was sent to prison. And while he was in prison, he kind of figures out who the mole is. And it's kind of funny because, like, the traitor, and he tries to, like, write to all his friends. And then he was sent to Siberia to be exiled in 3 years. And so then he decided to marry his wife so that they could be together in exile. And then after he was exiled, he was kicked out of Russia. So he rented a small apartment in Munich, Germany. And the thing that I love is that he gets very, very, very angry about all the injustice. I mean, there's a quote from 1915 where he gets angry about the racism in America. He calls Americans shameless in their oppression of the Negro. Like, it's and so it's amazing to see somebody who is that for the people, that, like, we are trained to not even expect there to be a leader that's that for the people. And you can also tell, for example, when he died with nothing in his, like, he had nothing. Like, he actually, when he was president, he had a 1-bedroom, he lived in the servants' quarter in the Kremlin. So but a lot of times they're like, oh, Lenin wanted power or whatever. And the funniest part is that one of my favorite things, it's called A Revolution Besieged. And it'll tell you, like, what a shit show the early Soviet Union was. I mean, in fact, Lenin actually wrote a decree that says, hey, I don't actually know what I'm doing, so you don't actually have to follow all my decrees. But then to the West, they call it authoritarianism because he says, okay, you oil companies, you can't drill here anymore. We're going to nationalize the oil fields. Okay, so, but he is hilarious, and you learn so many new insults. Like, you can call somebody a cloven-hoofed snake. Oh, he's also the very first person, I believe, to use mayonnaise as an insult. So, and what are some good hygiene okay. Okay, let's see. Pretend MSNBC, pretend that, well, basically, just remember their buzzwords. So, for example, when they say opposition or pro-democracy opposition, I mean, why are they calling, like, everyone should be pro-democracy. So if the only good thing they can say about somebody is that they're pro-democracy, everything else about them must be horrible. Foreign policy wise, just kind of think, I don't like just kind of think about the opposite. So, for example, look at who the sources are. Be very careful of the so-called exiles, especially who pays them. You'll see a lot of ridiculous stories coming out of North Korea. Like, once they claimed that Kim Jong-un had executed this lady, but then she was a singer and she gave a concert in Zurich, and so clearly she hadn't executed her. But what happens is that there's a big network of like Koch brothers related thing, people that just like give these defectors millions of dollars and then they're like, oh, sure. And so this happened last year with Bolivia too. They had this lady on CNN who we never heard about her, Janice Vacadaza. But then when you checked, she was actually like pretty, I mean, she was pretty right wing. She was complaining about how Evo Morales was allowing Santa Cruz to get all dirty or whatever by having his supporters. But of course, we know his supporters means indigenous people, not white people. And that's exactly what Trump, I mean, every right winger says. But because she was from Bolivia, the many of a mind did not like turn on. So that's what I would say. And I would also, the easiest way to silent centrists is doubling down. So if they, like, for example, if they ask, oh my God, are you supporting Castro? It's like, of course, yes. Why aren't you? Are you opposed to universal education? Are you opposed to healthcare for everyone? Why don't you support Castro? Boom. Righteous outrage is the only way to silence them. Yes. Yes. Most conservatives I know hate the left, not because, yes. You don't convince them to vote for the economic issues instead of the culture war. Just kind of, okay, this is how I would, if you're with the conservative, start with what you have in common. You both hate liberals. You both hate the Democratic Party. And then they'll be less suspicious of you, and then you can be like, well, you see, Trump and Nancy Pelosi agree with each other 90% of the time. Literally, like, what have they disagreed on? And then that can get the conversation starting. And often just so also be short, as in don't be like, I, in theory, like affordable access to healthcare, blah, blah, blah. That makes them suspicious. You have to be like, yes, healthcare for all. And lastly, you can't blink. You can't be afraid of them. So the Democrats, like when the conservatives ask, are you a socialist? The Democrats are like, no, here's my seed pile. I'm not a socialist. Instead, you should be like, yes, because I believe in an actual democracy. So just not blinking. And if they start talking about gender roles, like just like, I would say, does that really matter? Like Vogue was literally trying to troll Ben Shapiro into giving them more publicity. And it's so you kind of have to teach them the way capital works. Did I get all the questions? Incrementalism is a great way to make sure a goal is never met. Absolutely. I don't know who said it, but somebody did. Be sure to subscribe to my podcast and newsletter. I mean, I have lots of cool things on my newsletter. Like, for example, you'll kind of understand, you know how that when they're like, man, Nazis are socialists. Well, I explained how they're not, because you'll see. And another one is trying to explain what happened in Tibet. And also just about what colonialism and how colonialism is capitalism on steroids. It's where you turn a country into a corporation. So please subscribe. There's a button somewhere that comes around, I guess. If there is nothing else, thank you, Mark Fabian. Thank you so much. I guess I will bid you adieu. But you can always reach me on Twitter and I guess mostly on Twitter, or via the website, historically.substacks.com. Feel free to ask me any questions. I like talking to people. I love hanging out with people, and I love meeting new people.
First things first, thank you all for coming, spending time with us. Somebody asked me what my shirt says. 99 problems, 420 solutions. So, hopefully that was for fun. But what Esha, the reason why we asked Esha on here really was she's just got such a great perspective. She's so excitable and so energetic, and I just absolutely love what she brings to the table. And she was the one that kicked me off to reading some Lenin that I had not previously read, and it got all my mental juices flowing for how we can kind of look at how to move forward. Because when Bernie was once again not the nominee, and once again not leading the revolution that we all thought he would be leading, it left a lot of people with a very, very bitter, empty feeling, and myself included. And I really wasn't sure how to go forward, because the bold agenda that we wanted to do isn't going to happen under Joe Biden. We know this. That's not his game. He spent most of the debates explaining how he wasn't Bernie Sanders. So we believe you, Joe. You're not Bernie Sanders. So where does that leave progressives? And, the idea of organizing and looking at labor and looking at a multicultural, racial, multi-gendered, the whole intersectional movement that was being built under Bernie Sanders, it has to continue forward. The problem is that we just know that electoral solutions are only but one very, very small part of our path forward. And I think a much larger part of our path forward is organizing. It is literally remembering how labor worked to bring about the changes during the Industrial Revolution. But now we're in a very different world. We no longer have the means of, the whole workforce walking out of the building. We don't have many of the same luxuries, if you want to call it a luxury, that those workers had back then, where they had the union floor and they were able to go to the water cooler and everybody was at the same spot. Heck, in this COVID-19 world, we don't even have workplaces, many of us. So the idea of a general strike, the idea of many of these pro-labor things that we learned from, the turn of the century, 1900s, they're not really relevant today. They're relevant in terms of seeing that solidarity and working together can bring about change and demanding change, but they're not relevant in terms of the tactics. So we have to really kind of evaluate what the path forward looks like. And that's what I'm hoping that our mission will be able to do. We will educate people. We will provide experts. We'll provide people from the union world and from academia and from the boots on the ground that can provide us with insights on how we can organize and how we can move forward with or without a progressive in the White House, with or without a progressive Congress to work with. And, obviously, without any hope, there's no point in continuing. So we've got to find hope somewhere. And you saw clearly that, as Bernie Sanders got up to that Super Tuesday, the entire centrist establishment collapsed on itself under the guidance of Obama and literally boxed progressives clean out of the way. And it's with a very heavy heart that I say that, because for the last, 5-6 years, we've done nothing but elevate the platform of Bernie Sanders and the trying to educate people on what democratic socialism is, what socialism is, what modern monetary theory is, and a host of other things that are out there, like reparations, which Esha spoke to and which Sandy Darity has spoken to in other shows as well. So my hope is that we will be able to create an activist network, a network of people that really, really are willing to lean in and do some work, not just show up at the show, but actually do the hard work behind the scenes that makes these technical issues go away, that makes us so that we have a world-class platform to do actual video shows, that takes our podcasts and gets them out to a much larger audience instead of assuming someone else is going to do it. We are hoping that we can grow that base and get volunteers in here that believe in not just electoral work, but extra electoral work, non-electoral work, organizing, actual revolutionary behavior that helps transform society by educating each one, teach one, weaponizing knowledge one mind at a time, things like that. That is our whole ethos. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And so hopefully you will find a home here. You'll be able to work with us And hopefully we can make some change together. One of the big things, the most challenging things to do, is somehow or another finding a way to fund the revolution as well. So it's not just, we're a 501c3 and a 501c4. So our C4 side can handle the political work, actually endorsing and running candidates, and really, really doing the street work. The other side, the 501c3, is there to educate. It's there to work on policy and devise what true north is for a progressive movement, and to take the works of many of these academics that we're very closely tied to and translate that, to take all that stuff and put it into a format that we can actually use. All right. Well, with that, folks, I'm going to thank you all very much. Please, please, please consider becoming a monthly donor through our Patreon account. Please consider also, just volunteering, signing up, doing something, contributing in any way you can, becoming a writer, helping us edit, helping us do video, helping us do audio. We've got new podcasts coming out. Just so you all know, one of the ones that we're in the process of developing is a new podcast called The S Word. And it's going to be a bunch of people. Some of them know something, some of them don't know something, all talking about the S word, socialism, and trying to get a better understanding so that we can help push that ball, further and further, and to get over the goal line, so that we don't have to keep hearing all the fear porn that is thrown out because of all the stuff they think we're saying. We want to make sure that we can have a legitimate, honest conversation with people. And I want to thank everyone for joining us and being here tonight and being patient with our technical challenges. And I don't know, with that, I'm done. Thank you all very much for showing up.